Well, hello to With Tracy and hello, Adrienne.
Hello, how absolutely lovely to see you again. You're looking very well.
Thank you, and so are you.
Thank you.
So, as an intro to my guest today, who has based her career around storytelling through words and pictures. Starting out as a journalist, working on a local newspaper, Adrienne Rosen went on to work for the BBC, first in radio, presenting programmes, writing and reading the news, and then in television, where she was a reporter and a correspondent. Ask her who the most memorable person is she's interviewed, and she'll answer in quite a surprising way. From there, she moved into higher education and taught students the art of communication through journalism, working for Brighton University and the University for the Creative Arts. Her attentions eventually turned to doing her own thing, and her first foray into the world of business was when she and a friend made a daring move to leave their nice full-time jobs with paid holidays and start a media training company, of which she will share some of the interesting results with us today. Adrienne then took on the solo role of author and set about writing a novel, which she considers her greatest achievement. Now, as she nears the end of her career, she considers the lessons she's learned and that they've come from some of the most unexpected places. So, Adrienne, hello again.
Hello.
Honestly, I've been so looking forward to chatting with you. I know we've talked about it for quite a long time. And also, I feel that your story is really going to resonate, I think, with so many people, and not just with women. I think there's a lot of people out there today who feel, it's almost like their next step is retirement, but actually there are other options. Maybe they don't want to retire, or they've had all these ideas sort of swilling around for years, and now they've kind of got the opportunity to perhaps pick up with some of them. I don't know, should we just start with that one? What are your feelings on that?
Goodness, it's so difficult, isn't it? Time was when there was a retirement age and you stopped working and there was this kind of abrupt end to your working pattern and a new life began. But I think so many of us incorporate so many things that we enjoy doing into our everyday life, that when we do hit that age or that stage in life, it's a much slower and much more blended process than you might imagine. And also their money thing, I just can't help but think that whatever it is that you've done, you're used to making money, you're used to being independent, and you're used to having a certain amount of money that's yours. And so it's very hard for some people to let go of that. Yeah. And that's often a driver. Let's be clear, it might be because we love what we do, but I think the driver is often that we want to keep earning some money. That and the fact that we want the definition of working. So many of us define ourselves by our work, by what we do, by our career, and that's a really hard thing to let go of.
Yeah, no, totally. And I also think, I don't know what your feeling is, but I really do think the 60s are the new 40s, that whole age thing, age doesn't seem, we've got so much experience. I think we get to a point in life, 50s, 60s, 70s. So many people I know have got so much energy and still so much to give. They just don't want to give up, whatever that is.
That's true, they don't. Funny enough, I started doing a bit of volunteering in a kind of unusual way, actually, but I started to do a bit of volunteering, and it's to do with the BBC. You mentioned that I used to work there. And I was asked if I'd become part of a kind of older BBC community where we could keep in touch with each other if we lived nearby. And these aren't necessarily people I've ever worked with, but they're people who worked for the organisation. And I discovered that so many of them are still doing bits for the BBC here and there. They're still doing all kinds of things that could be defined as work. And it's about keeping that sense of who we were alive now. And I think that's really important, actually.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with you. So, Adrienne, before we go much further, I'd like us to take a step back. And could you share with us what kind of got you on that journalistic road, if you like?
Goodness, that is really the easiest answer to any of the questions you're going to ask me, I imagine. I always wanted to be a journalist. From the time where I used to read books by torchlight under the covers when I was a little girl. I loved writing, I loved communication. I've always been quite curious about people, what makes them tick and why they do certain things. And so I just always wanted to be a journalist. And you know, all those years ago, it was not easy. It was not an easy option as a woman to decide to go into journalism. It really wasn't. On that basis, I felt just somehow even more determined that that's what I was going to do. I'm just going to say, it was actually quite hard to study journalism as well in those days. Now it's really easy. You know, I've run journalism degrees, and those enthusiastic young people can go and get a degree, and it's a much easier process. For me, I had to do something which sounds rather painful, actually, called indentures. So I had to work for a local newspaper for 3 years, where they kept my wages artificially low, and in return sent me on these very long training courses where I learned law, central and local government administration, and dreaded shorthand.
Yes, shorthand.
The dreaded shorthand. And yet, if you didn't get your 100 words a minute shorthand, you didn't qualify. And without that qualification, you weren't going to get a job. So I had to work my little socks off at shorthand. I remember my mother, who still had amazing shorthand years later, used to write me little notes in shorthand. And I remember coming home once, and there was a boy, as there always is, who I was desperate to hear from. And there was a note outside my door with his name on it, and the whole note was in shorthand. And I was so frustrated. I remember waking her up and saying, "Mummy, what does this say? I need to know what it says." So there was an incentive.
So the BBC, I mean, can you give us a little bit of, insight to what it was like for the BBC? I mean, you've talked already about how it was quite difficult, probably as a woman, to get into journalism. And I also think about, what was it like in the BBC?
Well, the BBC was a glorious place to work in those days, and I loved it. There were fewer women, far fewer women than there are now at the BBC in journalism. And I had a tremendous experience there, except for one thing. And that one thing was that when I joined the BBC, my daughter was really quite new. And I remember that the only real group of women at the BBC were the copy takers. And I remember they got together once and they came to see me. And they said, "Look, you've got a baby and a husband and a family, and I know this is a great job, but your baby will get older very quickly and you don't want to miss out on those years. And are you sure you're doing the right thing by working full time?" My response to that was very grown up. I locked myself in the toilet and cried my eyes out. And I think that just shows, doesn't it, that example of how things were so different then.
Yeah.
So very different.
Yeah, totally. But anyway, you had a good experience at the BBC.
I had an amazing experience. I absolutely adored my job. I love that idea of finding a story and starting from a cold start. And by the time the programme rolled around in the evening, my story was on air. And I loved pitting myself against that kind of challenge and getting everything ready on time. I loved the people that I worked with, who all just knew their jobs so well that they could be relied upon to work swiftly and well. And it was a very, very collegiate, very, very lovely community. And we were all thrown together, of course. Used to work a 10-hour day and a 4-day week. So 10 hours in a day is a long time to spend with your colleagues. And you get to know them well and they become part of your life. And it was an extraordinary experience for me. I loved it. I was there for many years.
Now listen, I can't hold on anymore, because I did mention in the intro that we might be surprised who your memorable interviewee was.
I'm really going to disappoint you hugely, actually. I did interview some famous people. And what I would say is that the people who really were the most memorable for me were the everyday people whose stories of courage and the kind of snap decisions that they made under fire really remain the most interesting. But I did interview a hero or two. I interviewed Ted Hughes, who most people will think, well, Ted Hughes, you know, he's a poet laureate, not much of a famous interviewee. But I did interview him at a time where he didn't give interviews. And that's probably my greatest memory. I did briefly interview Tom Cruise as well and got a kiss, which was nice. But I think Tom Cruise hands out kisses, or did in those days, handed out kisses quite readily, especially if there was a camera around. And that was rather glorious. And I just, at the time, I was just so caught up by the fact that he was so little. He was so little. And I thought, oh, you're going to be some amazing, tall, you know, big, extraordinary man. But actually, he was quite little.
Still an extraordinary man, though. Gone on to do amazing films and stuff.
Indeed. And terribly cute back in the day.
So you then went into the world of higher education. And I just wonder, was that a conscious decision? I mean, what sort of took you from the corporate life into academic?
You know, the standard answer that I was given in interviews was that that I felt that there was a kind of vocational calling and transition to start lecturing. But as we're just talking amongst ourselves, what I would say is that that tiny daughter who I talked to you about earlier was growing by then. And was in that kind of, you know, really difficult, angry, early teenage years. And the truth of the matter was that I just wasn't seeing enough of her. And so I tried to come up with something that would still work for me, but I was on my own with her then, that would work for me and would extend my career and would give me some opportunity to be with her more. And I remember being out with my camera operator, and we were doing a stakeout, I remember, somewhere, and so we were just filling in the time, and he said to me, what is the job that you would like most in the world? And without even thinking about it, I said to him, my nanny's job. And I thought, ooh, I really need to listen to myself. Yeah. So that was the action that I took. And in fact, a brand new journalism course had opened up at Bournemouth University. And they'd come to us at the BBC to say, is there anyone who might do a day a week, who could teach journalism, you know, active, real, living journalism to the students? And my producer at the time had said to me, do you think this might interest you? And so that's how I began. I had one day a week as a sabbatical for a year, and I taught, and I loved it.
So you could, you know, it's quite nice, I think, if it's that progressive like that, or it evolves, doesn't it? So it's
yes.
a big jump. But then you did do a big jump. Then you went and set up your own business. So
crazy idea. So I'd only been in higher education for a couple of years, actually, and I met up with someone there, a colleague, and we became great friends. And she was very interesting because she was training to be a psychotherapist. So she was a journalist training to be a psychotherapist. And we started to talk about media training. We were asked to do some at the university. And at the time, we did what we could. And we started to think, hang on a minute, you know, but someone somewhere is making a lot of money out of this, and it's not us. So let's do something. And I, having always had a career and, you know, always had paid holidays and, you know, never had to work out my own tax, it was a huge jump in many ways, and an extraordinary thing to do, really quite extraordinary.
And how long did you do that for, Adrienne?
So we did that for about 3 years, and here's what happened. We worked our little socks off to get the business and to get the clients, and we worked really hard, and we made all those calls, and we signed people up, and we delivered the training, and we loved delivering the training. And then at the end of those training sessions, there we were back in our office, which we sourced together, and we realized that we didn't have any more business. So we drummed up all this business, delivered it, and then had nothing behind us. And neither of us knew how business worked. And it really wasn't ideal. And I remember we'd gone to our accountant for some help, and we'd said to him, do we have any money? And he said, actually, you've got quite a lot of money in your account. And so we said, great, lunch, shopping. And so we just didn't know how to behave, really. Couldn't work out how to keep the business rolling. And that was the real challenge for both of us.
Yeah, interesting. Yes, it is that, you know, having that strategy and constantly looking ahead, I think, you know, making sure you are planning ahead.
Yes. And of course, we weren't doing that. And we explored the idea of employing someone. And we interviewed a whole load of people, people who could sell us into companies. And we started to realize that really only we could sell us into companies. We had a very unique offering. I had access to BBC Studios at the time. My colleague had this extraordinary training as a psychotherapist, so was able to unpack all kinds of things and make meaningful sense of some of the behaviours of the people who were on our training courses. They were mostly quite high-powered politicians and executives. And we had this unique offering, and so only we really felt that we could sell it in. And it was just nice. We were so enthusiastic, but actually we didn't know about business.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? One thing I've learned with people who work together, particularly if it's a partnership like you guys had, that, you know, it's almost like you've both got to have different talents, because otherwise you can land up doing exactly the same. I mean, obviously you were delivering it together, but it's that business side of it. I think you've just got to make sure that you are bringing something different and unique to that relationship and to the business.
Yes. And then how do you train somebody to be part of that uniqueness when actually they aren't?
Yeah.
And I think in the end, that was probably our undoing, you know, that and the fact that, God, we loved a bit of shopping. You know, we worked really hard and, you know, for quite long periods of time. And then we thought, oh, God, we can lighten up and shop now. So we were never terribly good at the money, and we just weren't good at keeping that business going. So what would happen we'd have a period of time when we didn't have any work, when we were drumming up more business, and then of course more work would begin again. So it was far too stop-start to have that kind of smooth continuation that you really need to keep the business going.
So you did that for 3 years, and then I'm really intrigued by this, but you then, you just sat down and you wrote a novel.
Well,
I'm making it very easy, and I know it isn't at all. And the fact that you said it's one of your greatest achievements, so I'm not downplaying it. I'm just kind of like, there's so many people, me included, that would love to be able to write a novel. I mean, it sounds, and I'm sure it is, quite a momentous thing, you know.
Well, it's a lonely road, actually, writing. It really is. So I thought I've always wanted to write a novel, and, you know, had that kind of vanity that so many people have. Oh, you know, I have a novel in me. So I decided to do a master's degree in creative writing. And that's really where I learned so much. And I started to write my novel then. I didn't know it was a novel. I thought that I was simply doing my degree. And for my degree, I had to submit 20,000 words of original writing. And it started then, and it grew into a novel, and it grew in such a painstaking way. Sometimes I found it really easy to write. I used to write late at night. I used to, I don't know why, I found that was the best way for me. And, you know, sometimes I'd write furiously. In the morning, I'd have a look at what I'd written. And sometimes I'd keep quite a lot of it. Sometimes I'd just keep one sentence. And I thought the rest of it is garbage, actually, but this is a good sentence. So I learned to be a bit more discerning as well through my course. And aside from my daughter, who's my greatest achievement, I think that the novel is, because I finished it, And I was just so proud of myself for finishing it. It took a very long time, and and in fact, I'm going through it now, trying to just even it out, because it was written at different times in my life, and so the writing style changed. So once that's done, I'm really trying, Tracy, to get the courage to try to find an agent or a publisher. And I say courage because I'm really scared of the rejection. I know. First rejection, I'll be under the duvet weeping. So I know that I'm not good at that, and I'll think, oh well, if they've rejected it, it's obviously rubbish. So I just need a bit of courage.
I bet it's great. Can you tell us anything about it?
It's very much, in many ways, a kind of middle-aged Bridget Jones. Actually, it's about dating. A lot of it is about dating. I hope it has some profundity too. I hope it's quite funny as well in parts. I hope that it's a story that will chime with a lot of women who decide to do something brave a little bit later on in their lives. And that's the intention of it. And I hope that I've shown some vulnerabilities in my character as well, in the central character that I've created, because I think for so many of us, that's a hard thing to do. And it's a good thing to read about, because then you have a sense of solidarity.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, a lot of people listening will understand and appreciate that, that sense of, they don't want rejection. It's like we all want to do well, and we want to put our best foot forward, and you do something. And I'm sure with a novel, you put a lot of yourself into that, and your time and energy, to someone to critique it. But it sounds brilliant, and please do keep us posted, because there's going to be loads of us who want a copy.
Hey, how lovely. Thank you.
And then you've just got to get that done, Adrienne, and I'm sure there's going to be more novels in there. That's your career path now. Yes, novelist.
I think you're right, and obviously because I worked in television, I have an eye to making it visual. In my fantasy, I'm signing the Hollywood contracts for the screenplay. I'm trying to think big, because I think that's a lesson in life that I've probably taken on a little too late, actually, to think big.
Yes, always think big. You can always just scale it slightly. I think that's best route, totally. And who knows? Tom Cruise is still out there. He's still acting. Somewhere.
Well, I could find a place for him.
Yeah, I think listening. Yeah, you've got to get this book. So you've talked about some of your challenges, the challenges you face setting up a business, and obviously for a while you were also a single mother, and you've made those decisions. I mean, they're all really brave decisions. So I think you have actually shown an awful lot of courage, and you've made and had a fantastic career. I kind of, I'd like to go back to that bit as well, because one of the questions I get asked a lot, or one of the comments, is people can feel very overwhelmed, particularly if they're running their own business. But I think in life, you've been running a business, you had your daughter, as I say, a single parent for a while, and all that kind of stuff. So times of feeling overwhelmed, I'm sure you have had those moments, and I just like to ask people how they've sort of dealt with them in the past, or now even.
Isn't it a difficult one? Because I think that we women particularly, we take on a lot, and we have so many different people who need us or rely on us or depend on us. We have so many things that we do and that we juggle. I don't really like that word, but hey, that's kind of what we do. And I think the danger is, and this certainly happened to me, is that you just slip through the gap in the middle, where you realize that you're no longer doing anything for you. You're doing everything that's required of you, but nothing that refuels you. And, it's a thing that I've learned in lockdown as well. That's very important for me. How do you find something that refuels you? Particularly if part of your refueling is seeing your friends and being close and doing things together, and you can't do that. And I've learned some very simple things that refuel me, actually. And they're nothing surprising. But getting immersed in a book, getting immersed in my novel, going out into the countryside and just, you know, having that sense of the environment and nature and the part that you play in it, however small. And I think it's about finding things that refuel you personally, that don't have anything to do with the glass of wine at the end of the day, because you can have that later.
Yeah, that's quite useful. It's very nice having a glass of wine at the end.
Where would we be without it? Yes.
I love that description, actually, that you've used about being, you know, that refueling. You know, what do we need to be refueled, to feel like re-energized? And you are, you know, I think for me, I did get to see some friends, all but socially distanced, but ones I haven't suddenly seen for 7 months, you know, and actually in the flesh. And I have to say, I did feel completely uplifted when I got home, you know, extraordinary. And it's not like you weren't Zooming those people or talking to them, but just to be with people, you know, have them near you kind of thing. Yeah, it was a great thing for me, actually, that I would say I really did feel refueled.
You know, I know what you mean. And there are so many visual and communication cues that we lose in Zoom, don't we?
Yes.
And, you know, and when you see people and you can read their body language and look at them and watch them, then you have so much more to go on. You have a much clearer idea of who they are, how they're feeling, what's going on for them. And, you know, we've missed all this. It's like we have to relearn, I feel, all those visual cues that we've been missing for so long. It's so much easier to be real with people when you're sitting with them, isn't it?
I would like to ask you what changes you would like to see happen, particularly regarding women in business, because we've sort of touched upon that a little bit today. Over, you know, that sort of age, probably once you're 55 and over, you know, are there changes that you feel could be made?
Yes, what an interesting question. I mean, I know that officially, legally, you know, we can work until we're much older. But I think what I would like to see is something a little bit similar to the whole arena that's happening in the world of neurodiversity. And I'd like to see older people being valued for their experience. And I know that the way that HR companies tend to, or HR departments tend to deal with applications is if you don't tick those boxes that they've decided you need to tick, you know, whichever bit of software you need to be able to use, then your application just, you know, simply gets filed in the bin. And what I would like to see is much more value placed on the experience that people have, particularly women somehow, placed on what they know and what they do and what they've done and how they did it. And actually, you can always teach someone to use a bit of software if that's really so vital. But I would like to see, I suppose, a real respect for the people who've learned a lot along their journey and have a great deal to offer, because I think that there are so many changes that happen to us when we're older. Patience is one of them, I feel. I feel that I'm much more patient than I ever was. I feel that I have time, and there are various things that I feel I would like to be part of in an advisory capacity, really, where I can use my experience for that. I mean, it's a funny thing about timing. My daughter, who's in her early 30s, was saying to me, "Mommy, there's no real good time, is there, to have a baby?" It's a thing that's on her mind at the moment. And first of all, I said, "You know, you're right, darling, there probably isn't." And then I phoned her later that day and I said, "You know what, actually, there is a good time to have a baby. 63, which is my age. 63 is a really great age. You've finally got the patience, you've got a bit of money, you've got all the time that you can give. So I can tell you, my darling, 63, it's a good age."
I love that. I so love that. So what's next, Adrienne? What's sort of the vision? What's the future hold? or Adrienne Rosen, apart from obviously publishing your book, which
well, I've recently fallen in love. There's a thing, isn't it? In fact, you may have seen some sort of apparition walking behind me to the kitchen, on its way to get some coffee. And there's a thing to do when you're older. I wasn't really quite sure how I would be with this, but we have plans together. And a lot of my life has been about me and my daughter, and having this lovely kind of partnership where you have real plans for the future and things that you want to do together and ideas that you have. There's something really special about that for me, because it just opens up my world. And there are all kinds of things that we would like to do. Also, that whole experience of getting to know your partner's children, grown-up children in this case, but still, you're getting to know them. It's not like when you're younger and you have small children and maybe you're taking on a kind of step-parent role. It's not like that when the children are much older. So getting that right is quite key for me. And thinking as a pair rather than just thinking on my own. That's quite a sea change at my age, and I'm looking forward to what it may bring.
Yeah, totally. And I think out of all that, it's kind of saying, it's never too late, any of it. If it's your career, starting a business, doing something that you really want to do, if that in your case, you're writing a novel and you're going to get that published, or whatever. It's kind of saying we shouldn't think about the age thing. It shouldn't be a barrier in any sense or shape or form, should it?
In fact, I think it should be just the reverse. It is, in a way, when you're living in a society that tends to value youth and beauty in that very seamless kind of way, then I think it's about learning to understand what you have and remembering to value the enormity of what you know and what you have and what you can bring. That, and obviously debate the question as to whether or not we should have fillers and Botox.
That is another podcast.
It is, isn't it? It certainly is.
I always like to finish by asking my guest if there's one piece of advice. I know that it's not, sometimes there's more than one, but just a piece of advice or a bit of learning that you could offer to everyone listening today.
Well, I'm going to answer immediately, which doesn't mean that I know it, off the top of my head, but because I've had to think about that. And there is one thing that stands out for me, and that is integrity. Hold on to your integrity. Sometimes it might be the only thing you have when things get difficult. Hold on to it, because when you do lie awake in those sleepless nights, worrying about things, don't make your lack of integrity one of them, because that's a hard one to patch up again. Keep hold of it and use your integrity as a guide, because it will guide you to the right place and it will allow you to make the right decisions. And it will mean ultimately that you can sleep at night. And if we believe in some kind of karma or whatever you want to call it, it will come back to you. If you behave with integrity, people will start to behave with integrity towards you too.
What a lovely piece of advice to finish on. Adrienne, thank you so much for being with Tracy. Please, I'd love you to come back, and you've got to tell us anyway, when the book is published, what it's called and where we're going to get it from, and I will share on my website as well. So and then we can get Adrienne back and she can tell us all about her novel. Thank you so much, my dear. That's been so interesting.
Thank you. I've loved it. Thank you so much.